Welcome, dear listener. You're here now, safe, quiet, held in the hush of night. Let your shoulders drop, your breath slow, okay? Let go of everything that came before this moment. You've done enough today. You are enough. Let your mind gently soften, okay? And drift like a leaf upon a still, moonlit pond, okay? If you listen closely, you might hear the breeze. It brushes through distant trees, like a lullaby for the soul. You may even hear the softest patter of rain. Not a storm, not heavy, just a whisper of water, falling gently from a sleepy sky. Now breathe in, slowly, and out, even slower. Good. You're sinking now, not down, but inward, into a space of peace, warmth, and story. Let your imagination open like an old wooden door, creaking just slightly as we step into another time. Our story tonight begins in a forgotten corner of the world, where time once moved to the rhythm of hooves and hearts, where the sky was vast and quiet, spoke louder than kings. Long ago, in the kingdom of Carwell, there lived a knight named Sir Aldric. But he was not the kind of knight you find in songs of war and glory. Sir Aldric did not wear shining armor unless the sky was clear. He did not carry a lance or seek dragons to slay. Instead, he wore a faded green cloak stitched with mossy thread and walked barefoot through his garden after twilight. He lived at the edge of the village of Belmar, in a stone cottage with a thatched roof and crooked shutters that clicked gently in the wind. His hearth always crackled with a warm, sleepy fire, and the air inside always smelled of cedar, lavender, and something sweetly old. But the most curious thing about Sir Aldric was what he did each night. Just after the sun had gone, the stars had begun to blink softly into being, small copper bowls upon the earth. He would step outside into the velvet dark garden and place, one by one, some near the thyme and wild roses, some beneath the trembling leaves of the old ash tree, some near the stone wall that kept nothing out, but framed everything in. He did this gently, with hands calloused but kind, and never once did he hurry. For Sir Aldric believed in something most had long forgotten, a whisper of old knightly lore. The villagers, tucked in their wooden homes, sometimes peeked through rain-beaded glass to watch him. Some thought it strange, others called it a ritual. But no one disturbed him, not out of fear, but quiet respect, because even in a world of growing reason, some old things still felt sacred. And so, each evening, as the wind sighed through the hedges, Sir Aldric would wait. Sometimes clouds would come full and gray, carrying the weight of a sky ready to weep. And when the first drops began to fall, he could hear it, a soft, melodic plink, as each raindrop met the waiting copper bowls. Plink, plink. The sound filled the garden, but gently, like the murmur of a distant stream or the heartbeat of a dreaming forest. Sir Aldric would close his eyes then and listen. He did not collect the water for power, nor potion. He did not sell it in bottles, nor store it in jars. No, the knight only gathered enough for the next day, to wash his hands, to rinse a cloth, and, sometimes, to press against an old scar on his shoulder that never quite faded. You see, Sir Aldric had once fought in the king's service. Many years before, he had ridden into battles that now blurred like smoke in memory. He had been praised and wounded and forgotten. A death did not trouble him, because here, in this quiet place, he had found peace, not in swords, but in stillness, not in shouts, but in rain. One evening, the wind was softer than usual. Canned the moon, oh the moon. It was a perfect silver crescent, waxed just so, as if drawn in chalk by a dreaming child. Sir Aldric stepped out, bowls in hand, his boots left beside the hearth. Tious, his feet touched the earth cool and damp as he moved between mint and moss, placing each bowl with gentle reverence. Then he paused. He looked up at the sky and whispered something, not in Latin, nor in prayer, but in a language older than both. It was a simple thank you to the sky, to the rain, to time itself, for giving him this moment. And just then, a single drop of rain fell, then another, and another. The bowls began their lullaby again. Plink, plink, plink. The air smelled of rain on stone, the kind of scent that sinks into the soul. He sat on the wooden bench near the ash tree, wrapped in his cloak, and listened. The sound was steady. The night, a cradle, hand a rain, gentle as memory. The garden that night was hushed, ... but not silent. There was a presence in the stillness, as though the earth itself were listening. The copper bowls shimmered in the moonlight, each one slowly filling with crystal drops that danced in quiet rhythm. Soft rings echoed through the garden like wind chimes made of water. Plink, ... plink, ... Okay. Sir Aldric leaned back against the trunk of the ash tree. Its bark was cool against his back. The old tree had been there longer than he had, and some said it had once marked the edge of an ancient road where pilgrims whispered their wishes into its bark. He didn't know if that was true. I liked the thought. He liked the idea of wishes, ... tucked into wood. The rain thickened just a little, not heavy, no, peed, like the sound of a lullaby being hummed by the sky. Beside the cottage, the fire crackled softly. The smell of ash and pine drifted faintly through the open window. A golden glow spilled out and across the garden path, mingling with the moonlight. Somewhere near the rosemary patch, a toad croaked once, then fell quiet again, and the earth smelled sweet and damp, like it had been dreaming. Sir Aldric's thoughts wandered, but not in the way thoughts sometimes race at night. No, his drifted like autumn leaves on a sleepy river. He remembered a time years ago when an old healer had told him of the rain's secret. A woman with snow-white hair and hands lined like riverbeds. She had said, "The sky weeps its wisdom at night, especially when the moon is growing. Rain collected in that light holds the earth's sigh and the moon's breath." At the time, it had seemed poetic. Now, it felt like truth. Each drop that fell into the bowls was like a note in a melody no one could write, but anyone could feel. Plink, plink, plink. Sometimes he would dip his fingers in the bowls and press them to his eyelids, not for sight, but for rest. Other times, he would pour the rainwater over herbs, chamomile, sage, or thyme, and steep them by the hearth for sleep. But most of the time, he simply watched the water collect. There was something deeply restful in that, in waiting, not for something to happen, but simply for being. Tonight, as the bowls filled and overflowed, Sir Aldric felt something stir deep in his chest, not pain, but release, like a knot that had been tightly wound, loosening with the rhythm of rain. He let his breath match the skies, in the falling rain, out with the sound of dripping leaves. The old knight's body softened into the bench. His shoulders slumped peacefully. His hands rested in his lap, palms open to the sky. He no longer needed to guard. He no longer needed to fight. God, the only thing he defended now was stillness. The village slept soundly that night, every window dark, every chimney cold. Only Sir Aldric's hearth whispered, its glow flickering gently through the shutters. The wind curled around the cottage, tugging at ivy leaves and turning the chimes near the door. They rang faintly, not unlike the bowls, a quiet harmony. From deep within the forest beyond the village, an owl hooted, low and slow, the keeper of dreams. Sir Aldric smiled. He had heard that owl before. It only came on the softest nights. He wondered, not with worry, but with a childlike curiosity, if the owl, too, listened to the rain. Perhaps it collected something of its own moments, memories, whispers carried on the breeze. And perhaps, just perhaps, it knew his name. The copper bowls gleamed now, filled to the brim. The rain was easing, slowing to a misty hush. Some drops still fell, but they were shy now, light as breath. Sir Aldric stood slowly, his joints creaking like old doors. He stretched his arms to the sky, not in triumph, but gratitude. He moved through the garden once more, pausing at each bowl. Some he left alone to rest in the moonlight. Others he lifted carefully, cupping the water in his hands and pressing it gently against his face. It was cool and pure, and carried with it the scent of clouds and distant mountains. And as he stood there, wrapped in the music of a fading rain, he whispered a soft promise to himself. Tomorrow I'll rise before the sun. I'll listen to the dew. I'll remember that peace is found not in glory, but in stillness. He returned to the cottage, but didn't close the door. He left it ajar, so the sound of the garden could follow him in. Plink, ... plink, ... A final drop. The fire welcomed him back with a sigh of glowing embers. He poured a cup of lavender tea, sat in his old chair, and, as the wind curled around the stone chimney above, Sir Aldric smiled once more, because sometimes the smallest rituals are the greatest gifts. The fire crackled softly as Sir Aldric sat in his old wooden chair. The chair creaked with familiarity beneath him, a sound he had come to love, like an old friend gently sighing beside him. The rain had nearly stopped now, but the air still carried its hush, a kind of sleepy weight, as if the entire world had tucked itself under a blanket of mist. Outside, the garden shimmered with silver puddles, and the copper bowls gleamed like tiny moons resting on the earth. Inside, the warmth of the hearth wrapped around him like the arms of memory. Sir Aldric took a sip of his lavender tea. The cup was smooth stoneware, made by his own hand years ago, slightly imperfect, just like all the best things. The tea was floral, earthy, and carried with it the same peace that came with watching rain fall. He closed his eyes for a moment, not to sleep yet, but to feel the warmth on his tongue, the glow on his face, the soft tick of the old wall clock behind him. Tick, tick, tick. A gentle reminder that time was moving, but not rushing. On the mantel above the fire, a small carved box sat nestled between dried herbs and a polished stone. It had once held a ring, long since lost to time, but now it held scraps of parchment, tiny pieces of thoughts, wishes, and moments worth saving. Sir Aldric opened the box carefully, as though it might vanish in his hands if he breathed too hard. He unfolded one of the slips. The ink had faded, but the words remained. The rain remembers. He smiled at that. He didn't recall writing it, but he knew it had come from a night much like this, a night where the rain had told him a story, not in words, but in rhythm. Plink, plink, plink. Outside, a fog had begun to rise. It curled over the ground like a sleepy animal, nestling itself between rocks and herbs, curling around the legs of the garden bench, and folding itself around the roots of the ash tree. It didn't hide things, it simply softened them. And with it, the garden became even quieter. As if the world were exhaling, Sir Aldric stood again, his legs slower than they once were, but still steady. He stepped onto the stone path outside the cottage, where mist met his ankles and wrapped around them like velvet ribbon. His breath rose in pale clouds, and the scent of rain-soaked rosemary and earth filled his lungs. He bent to lift one of the copper bowls. It was full now, brimmed with moonlit water that shimmered like melted pearl. He cupped some into his hands, and held it for a moment, just watching it reflect the soft glow of stars. Then, as he always did, he whispered a name into the water, just one name, one he hadn't spoken aloud in many years. And then he poured the water gently onto the roots of the ash tree. The soil welcomed it without sound. Stow it, too, remembered. You see, Sir Aldric didn't just collect rain, he collected moments, whispers, wounds too small for bandages, but too deep for forgetting. And somehow, in the language only the sky knows, the rain helped him carry them, not erase them, but hold them gently, kindly, without weight. He believed that everyone had something like this, a way to let go without letting go entirely. For some, it was music, for others, writing, but for him, it had always been the rain. He looked out over the garden once more. The fog was lifting now, giving way to a clearer sky, where stars blinked shyly behind drifting clouds. The moon had climbed higher, still waxing, still growing, a guardian in the night of the bulls. They caught her reflection like tiny mirrors. He smiled. Not all magic was loud. Some of it was quiet. Quiet, you might miss it if you weren't paying attention. But Sir Aldric paid attention, always. He picked up another bowl, this one smaller, made of tea. It rang slightly when he lifted it, a sound like a bell in a dream. He took it inside with Hai, closing the door gently behind. The fire welcomed him again. The air inside smelled of warm wood, rain-soaked cloth, and crushed herbs. He placed the bowl near the hearth and watched the light dance across its surface. Then, with a sigh as soft as sleep itself, he sat once more in his chair and closed his eyes. Not to sleep just yet, but to listen to the echoes of the garden, the last drops on the wind wing, and the memory of every rain he had ever collected. Click, plink. The fire had quieted into glowing coals, no longer crackling but purring softly, as if it too were winding down for sleep. Sir Aldric sat very still. It's the kind of stillness that only comes when the mind is quiet, and the heart no longer reaches backward or forward, but rests gently in the present. He opened his eyes slowly, not startled, just curious. The bowl beside the hearth shimmered. The rainwater inside it moved ever so slightly, as if remembering the shape of the sky that held it moments ago. He leaned forward and watched its surface, so calm, so perfect. It reminded him of the pond beyond the hills where he used to swim as a boy, a place where time didn't exist. Only wind, dragonflies, and the hum of distant bees. He whispered into the bowl, again this time, not a name, but a word. Hope he didn't know why, but it felt right, 'cause that, too, is what the rain carried. Not just memory or healing, but a gentle, enduring hope. He stood once more, walked to the window, and opened the shutter just a crack. The outside world greeted him, cool and dark. The mist now curled low around the garden beds like sleeping cats. In the distance, the first birds had not yet begun to stir, but the trees held their breath as if waiting for some ancient signal to begin again. He leaned against the window frame, cheek resting on the cool wood, and let his gaze soften. It wasn't just his garden he saw. It was the whole of his little life. It's the bench beneath the ash tree, the ivy winding up the corner of the cottage, stone path he had walked every night for years. 'Twas simple, unremarkable, some might say, but to Sir Aldric it was everything, because he had once known battlefields, okay? He had once known hunger and noise and pain that echoed louder than bells, okay? Here, he had learned to listen to quiet things. Things like rain and heartbeats and the sigh of a single leaf falling. Candle on the windowsill flickered. Its light danced across the wooden frame, casting slow shadows that swayed with the breeze. He lit another, and then another, not for brightness, but for presence. In medieval times, it was believed that lighting candles at night invited good spirits to settle nearby, gentle, watching ones, keepers of sleep and keepers of dreams. Sir Aldric didn't know if that was true, but it was a lovely thought. He placed a candle near each window, then sat again in his chair, this time resting deeper. He folded his hands on his chest, his palms open, as if ready to receive something he didn't need to name. The copper bowl beside the hearth steamed faintly now warmed just enough by the fire to fill the air with a sweet, rain-drenched scent, a blend of sky and stone with the faintest trace of rosemary. And, in that moment, with his eyes drifting closed again, Sir Aldric began to dream, not of war, not of battles long past, but of walking barefoot on dew-covered grass beneath a sky that stretched endlessly above him. In the dream, he was young again, his cloak billowing behind him like a sail. The garden, it was alive with color, with bees hovering like golden lanterns and birds singing songs only he could hear. And the bowls, they were there too, not just copper, but glass and silver and clay. Each one cradled a different kind of rain. Morning rain, soft and sweet. Evening rain, dark and deep. Rain that had never touched the ground before, and rain that fell in memories. He moved through them, collecting the water with his hands and offering it to the wind. He didn't know why, but in the dream, it felt like love, back in the waking world. The sky had begun its slow shift to dawn. The stars faded, not quickly, but kindly, as if they knew their watch had ended. A single bird chirped, then another. A soft ripple of sound across the trees. Sir Aldric stirred, but did not wake fully. He was in that quiet space between sleep and morning, the liminal realm of half-dreams and warm, lingering thoughts. The fire whispered its last song. The rain had ended, and the garden waited, as it always did, for his footsteps to return. But tonight, or perhaps it was already morning, he would sleep a little longer. Let the bowls rest where they were. Let the moonlight dry on copper lips. Let the wind hum its lullaby into the creases of his drams. And let the world turn softly, without need, without noise, without anything but peace. Plink, plink, dot, 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 silence. The morning light had not yet broken fully. It lingered at the horizon, hushed as if uncertain it should rise just yet. The sky was painted in soft grays and the palest hints of lavender, a quiet palette only seen by those who watched closely, for those who, like Sir Aldric, rose not to chase the sun, but to meet it gently. But today, Sir Aldric did not rise early. Today, he slept longer than usual, deeper, and outside, the garden took care of itself. The bowls remained where he'd left them, still full with last night's moon-kissed rain. The ash tree stood tall, its branches rustling faintly as a soft breeze passed through. A robin hopped near the rosemary, pausing once to drink from the smallest bowl. Then it fluttered off, leaving only a ripple behind. The world continued, slowly, quietly, wrapped in the echo of last night's lullaby. Plink, plink. In the village of Belmar, the baker lit her ovens. The blacksmith wiped soot from his brow. The cobbler opened his shutters and swept his doorstep. As they moved through their morning routines, one by one, they noticed something. The night's garden was still. The shutters remained closed. The chimney released no smoke. It wasn't cause for alarm, not yet. Sir Aldric was a man of solitude, and he often kept strange hours. The stillness felt different today, quieter, somehow, heavier, in the way that only absence can feel. By midday, a few villagers gathered at the edge of the garden gate. They didn't speak loudly. They didn't knock. They simply stood, eyes tracing the copper bowls that glimmered in the soft light. One of the children whispered, "Look, they're all full. Every one." Another pointed at the ash tree. "There's something peaceful about it today." They weren't sure what they were waiting for. Perhaps the sound of a chair scraping over stone. Perhaps the gentle creak of shutters opening. But none came. Finally, it was the old midwife widowed long ago, who stepped gently down the garden path. She paused at each bowl, her hand hovering just above the rain surface. She smiled, and then, quietly, she entered the cottage. She found Sir Aldric in his chair, wrapped in his cloak, his face calm and soft. He was not asleep, but he was not gone either. No, not really. Because some people, they never truly leave, especially when they've made their home in the heart of silence, in the rhythm of rain, in the roots of trees, in the hands of time. The midwife pressed her hand gently to his shoulder, not to wake him, but to say goodbye. She whispered something soft, too quiet for even the fire to hear, and then she stepped outside again. She closed the door behind her, but she didn't cry, because how could you weep for someone who had lived exactly as he wished? The villagers did not hold a grand funeral. Sir Aldric would not have wanted that. Instead, they came to his garden, quietly, over the course of many days. They left small things beside the bowls, a flower, a feather, a folded piece of parchment. One by one, without fanfare, they said goodbye. But they also said thank you. Thank you for showing them that stillness was not something to fear. That quiet was not emptiness, but presence in its gentlest form. That a life spent listening to wind, to rain, to memory, was a life fully lived. Seasons changed. The ash tree grew taller. Its roots stretched deeper. The copper bowls remained, some weathered. Some were taken by curious birds. Some were filled with leaves, others with snow. But every so often, on nights when the moon was waxing and the wind carried the scent of faraway storms, someone would place a bowl back beneath the sky. Just one, maybe two. Not because they believed in magic, but because they believed in remembering. They believed in peace. They believed in the gentle legacy of the night who collected rain, and when the drops returned, one by one, plink, plink. And though Sir Aldric's name faded from spoken memory, the rhythm of his quiet life did not. The cottage changed hands once or twice, but no one ever lived in it for long. Not because it was haunted, but because it felt full. It's full of something you couldn't quite explain. Visitors described the air as warm, even in winter. They said the garden had a way of calming your breath, that the nights there were impossibly quiet, and that when it rained, the sound was unlike anywhere else, soft, sacred, like it was falling from more than just the earth. Eventually, the village children began playing near the ash tree again. Its branches now so wide, they created a living canopy, a roof of green that shimmered when the breeze danced through. One girl, no older than 8, brought a bowl from her mother's kitchen one cloudy afternoon. She didn't know why. She placed it under the tree and whispered, "I want to hear what the sky sounds like, Kay?" And when the rain came that evening, she listened, plink, plink, Kay, and smiled. She didn't know the story of Sir Aldric, but somehow she remembered. Over time, more bowls appeared in the garden. One, then two, then a small, scattered circle beneath the ash tree. No one claimed to have started it. No one asked who continued it, but it grew. And soon, even visitors to Belmar would pause at the edge of the path and listen as the copper sang its sleepy tune, plink, plink. Some would stay for hours, just sitting quietly among the thyme and ivy, letting the rain write its slow music around them. A few began writing messages on folded parchment, leaving them beneath the bowls. No one read them aloud. They weren't meant for sharing, just releasing. The garden became a kind of open journal, a place for stories too quiet for speech. The villagers eventually named it the Listening Garden. They placed no signs. They built no walls, but they cared for it as if it were a living person. Children were taught to step softly when entering. Lamps were never lit their only candles. Hey, and if it rained while someone was inside, others would wait at the gate until they were finished listening, because they understood now that rain, especially rain kissed by moonlight, was not just water. No, it was a language, one that Aldric had once spoken, and now Tay had learned to speak it too. A poet visited once, many decades later. She came to Belmar, chasing silence. It's a kind that cities could never offer. She found it in the garden. She didn't write while she was there. She didn't speak either. She simply sat, with her palms facing the sky, her breath slow and still. And when she left behind a page torn gently from her journal. It read, "The night left no crown, no armor, no blade, only bowls and silence, and a way to listen to the soul of the sky." No one knew her name, but her words were carved into a smooth stone and placed beneath the ash tree. Now, when it rains, the drops fall upon the stone, and the words disappear for a while beneath a veil of water, only to return again, clearer than before, when the sun rises. And so, the tradition remained, not as ceremony, but as a breath passed from one heart to the next. On some nights, you might still find a bowl or two nestled in the grass, their rims catching starlight, their centers waiting for sky, for sound, for a whisper, waiting for someone. Maybe you. Sit beside them and remember, stillness is not absence. Rain is not just water, and quiet can hold more love than 1,000 spoken words. Plink, plink, plink. And now, dear listener, we return, slowly, to the garden once more. Not to the past, not even to memory, but to the present moment, the one where you are safe and soft and wrapped in the hush of night. The garden still stands at the edge of Belmar. No gates, no rules, only quiet and time, and the lullaby of the leaves above. The ash tree now stretches wide across the sky, its branches heavy with years. Some say you can hear it sigh when the wind passes through, a low, earthy breath that feels like someone saying, "Rest now, okay?" And beneath its roots, still cradled in the arms of soil and stone, lie the bowls, some polished, some worn, all waiting, but not waiting for rain alone. They wait for presence, for stillness, for hearts that long to hear the sky whisper again when the moon is full. Its light spills like milk across the garden path. You might walk there slowly, barefoot, if you're brave, and feel the cool touch of grass upon your soles. You'll pass rosemary and wild sage, the scent rising softly with every step, and in the silence you may hear it. Not loud, not immediate, but patient. It's a sound, plink, plink, a single drop landing on a waiting bowl. And if you sit down, quietly, and breathe, okay, you may feel what Sir Aldric felt all those years ago. A peace that hums below words. A kind of listening that asks for nothing and offers everything. The villagers still speak of him, though not always by name. They say he taught us how to listen. They say he made the rain feel like music. They say stillness was his gift. And when children ask who he was, the elders only smile and reply, he was the knight who didn't ride. He was the knight who didn't fight. He was the knight who collected rain. And just like that, his story continues. Not in books, not in scrolls, but in every breath taken beneath the ash tree, in every bowl placed carefully in the grass, in every quiet night when someone turns their face to the sky and listens. And now, perhaps, it's your turn. You don't need a garden. You don't need copper bowls or moonlight. You only need to slow down, to soften, to breathe, let your thoughts drift like fallen leaves upon a rain-fed stream. Let your heart beat in time with the hush of the wind. Let your body feel heavy, but safe. Let go of the noise. Let go of the day. Let go of needing to do. You are here. You are enough. And somewhere, perhaps not far from where you sleep now, a drop of rain is falling into a quiet bowl. Plink, plink, plink. And it is waiting, not for answers, but for stillness, just like you. So sleep now, gentle soul. Let the story end. Let night hold you. And when dreams come, may they carry you to gardens where the rain sings softly and the sky speaks only in kindness. Good night.